Okay, what we're working with today is section 1.3, and we're still working with the basics of geometry, and today we're just going to continue to look at segments. And so the first word we need to know is bisect, and bisect is kind of two words that you should be familiar with. You should be familiar with dissect, and when you dissect something, you're cutting it up. And then the front of the word bi, think about bicycles. Bicycles have two wheels, okay? And so bisect is when you cut something in half. So you cut it in half. So B becomes the midpoint, it's in the middle. I put tick marks to show that the left is equal to the right, and then I'm going to say that they're congruent because those two things are equal and they're the same measure, so they're the same shape, so they're congruent. So bisect means to cut it in half. The next vocabulary we were to have is actually a formula, and that's the distance formula. You may have seen the distance formula in Algebra 1 or even maybe middle school, but the distance formula is how far points are away from each other. So to find AB, so if you notice, if it says something like find AB without a segment above, remember that's a number, so it's actually looking for a distance. And so this is the formula you'll use. So make sure you have it copied it down, and when you take notes, you can kind of learn how to do it. It looks complicated, but it's actually not as bad as it looks. And then the last formula we have, or the second formula we have today, is the midpoint formula. And the midpoint is when you have the halfway point, or a bisector of a segment. And the midpoint is just the average. And so I add the x's up and divide by 2, and I add the y's up and divide by 2. So make sure you write this formula down. They're not that difficult to use after you practice them some. So remember, bisect means to cut in half. Midpoint, you're finding the middle point of coordinates. And then distance, you're actually finding the length of the segment.